Welcome to Stellar Narratives. In the year 1206, a man stood on the Mongolian steppe and did something that had never been done before. He united every warring tribe across the entire region under a single banner. Nobody had managed it. Nobody had even come close. Within 20 years, his armies had conquered more territory than the Roman Empire accumulated in 3 centuries. In this video, we are counting down the 10 greatest Khans in Mongol history, ranked by their achievements. These are the rulers and warlords who built the largest contiguous empire the world has ever seen, shattered civilizations, reshaped the map of Asia and Europe, and in some cases, changed the course of human history in a single campaign. We are also including 2 special mentions at the end, for figures who were not technically Khans, but whose stories are so deeply woven into Mongol history that leaving them out would be a disservice to you. And at the end, learn more about the number 1 on this list, whose life began as a slave, abandoned on the steppe with nothing. But what he built from that starting point is one of the most extraordinary stories in all of human history. Let us begin. Number 10. Chagatai Khan, son of Genghis Khan, died 1242. Chagatai Khan was the enforcer. Where his brothers were conquerors and administrators, Chagatai was the man who made sure that the law of the Mongols, the great legal code known as the Yasa that his father Genghis Khan had created, was followed without exception. He believed in it absolutely. He enforced it without mercy, without favoritism, and without compassion. It did not matter who you were. The law applied to everyone, including his own brother. When the great Khan Ögedei was found guilty of breaking the Yasa by drinking from a river, Chagatai personally demanded he face consequences. The ruler of the most powerful empire on earth had to answer to his younger brother for breaking a rule about water. That tells you everything you need to know about Chagatai's commitment to Mongol law. His lasting achievement was the Chagatai Khanate, the Central Asian territory that bore his name and outlasted every other Mongol successor state. While the main empire fractured and collapsed, the Chagatai Khanate survived in various forms until the 17th century. Over 400 years after his death, his name was still on the map. The Chagatai language, a form of Turkic used across Central Asia for centuries, is named after him. And a warlord who would one day make the entire world tremble would claim the Chagatai Khanate as the foundation of his own power. But that is a story for the special mentions. Number 9. Ghazan Khan, ruler of the Ilkhanate, reigned 1295 to 1304. Ghazan Khan inherited a broken empire and turned it into something that actually functioned. By the time he came to power, the Ilkhanate, the Mongol state controlling Persia and Iraq, was collapsing. The economy was in ruins. The administration was corrupt from top to bottom. The army was demoralized. Ghazan did something revolutionary for a Mongol ruler. He stopped conquering and started governing. He converted to Islam, became the first Ilkhanate ruler to do so, and used it to build genuine bridges with the Persian population that generations of Mongols had been brutalizing. He reformed the tax system. He standardized weights and measures across his territory. He rebuilt irrigation systems, repaired roads, and created an efficient postal network that actually worked. He was also a scholar in a way that no Mongol ruler before him had been. He spoke 6 languages. He studied astronomy, medicine, history, and chemistry. He commissioned histories of the Mongol people. He was the most intellectually accomplished ruler the Mongol world ever produced. On the battlefield, he defeated the Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt in open combat. One of very few times a Mongol force managed that feat. He died at 32 years old. The question of what he might have achieved with another 2 decades is one worth sitting with. Number 8. Berke Khan, ruler of the Golden Horde, reigned 1257 to 1266. Berke Khan did something that would have been unthinkable to his grandfather Genghis. He converted to Islam. Berke was the first Mongol ruler to genuinely embrace the faith, not as politics, but as personal conviction. He studied Islamic theology, built mosques across his territory, invited Muslim scholars to his court, and oriented the Golden Horde, which controlled Russia and the Western steppe, toward the Islamic world rather than toward the Mongol heartland. This led directly to something that had never happened before in Mongol history: a war between Mongols. When his cousin Hulagu Khan sacked Baghdad and executed the Caliph, the most important figure in Sunni Islam, Berke declared that Hulagu had brought catastrophic shame on the entire Mongol people. He allied with the Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt against his own cousin and launched military campaigns against Hulagu's Ilkhanate. Mongols killing Mongols over religion. It was the first deep crack in the empire that Genghis had spent his lifetime building, and it widened into a fracture that never healed. Berke also maintained the Golden Horde's iron grip on Russia, extracting tribute, controlling the vital trade routes between East and West, and keeping the Russian princes in a state of submission that would last for generations. His diplomatic reach stretched from Egypt to Byzantium, making him one of the most sophisticated statesmen the Mongol world produced. Number 7. Toqtamish Khan, ruler of the Golden Horde, reigned 1378 to 1395. The story of Toqtamish Khan is one of the most dramatic rises and falls in Mongol history. He came to power with almost nothing, a refugee prince who was given sanctuary, an army, and a chance by the most feared warlord of the age, a man named Timur. With that support, Toqtamish reunified the Golden Horde, which had been split by decades of civil war, and restored it to genuine military power. In 1382, he sacked Moscow, the most significant Russian city of the era, forcing the Russians back into submission and reasserting Mongol dominance over the region. He was, for a moment, one of the most powerful rulers in the world. Then he turned on the man who had made him. Toqtamish launched multiple invasions into Timur's territory, attacking the man who had saved his life and built his empire. Timur's response was devastating and methodical. At the Battle of the Kondurcha River in 1391 and the Battle of the Terek River in 1395, Timur crushed the Golden Horde's armies so completely that the state never fully recovered. Toqtamish fled. He spent the rest of his life as a wandering exile, seeking refuge from one ruler to the next. The great Khan, who had sacked Moscow, reduced to begging for protection. He died around 1406, still searching for a way back to power that never came. His story is a masterclass in the cost of betraying your allies. Number 6. Möngke Khan, Great Khan of the Mongol Empire, reigned 1251 to 1259. Möngke Khan was the last ruler to hold the entire Mongol Empire together with genuine authority. He came to power after years of political chaos, and his first act was to purge the court of his enemies with ruthless precision. Hundreds of officials and nobles were executed or exiled. The message was simple: the empire had a ruler again. Möngke, then, did something his predecessors had largely failed to do. He governed. He introduced a proper census across all Mongol territories, standardized taxation, eliminated corruption from the central administration, and created a more rational system of imperial management than had ever existed before. He then launched the most ambitious military campaign since Genghis himself. He sent his brother Hulagu west to destroy the Islamic world. He sent his brother Kublai south to crush China's Song dynasty. He himself led the campaign into China from the north. He never came back. Möngke died in 1259 at the siege of Diaoyu Fortress, either from dysentery or a battle wound. His death stopped two of the greatest military campaigns in history at the same moment. Hulagu halted his advance into Egypt. Kublai abandoned China to return home and fight for the throne. The Battle of Ain Jalut, where the Mamluks stopped the Mongols and saved the Islamic world, happened directly because Möngke died in a siege in China. One man's death changed the history of an entire civilization. Number 5. Batu Khan, founder of the Golden Horde, reigned 1227 to 1255. Batu Khan brought the Mongol terror to the doorstep of Western Europe. As grandson of Genghis and commander of the Western campaigns, Batu oversaw the complete conquest of Russia between 1237 and 1240. City after city fell. Vladimir, Suzdal, and Kiev, then the most important city in Eastern Europe, were all reduced to ash and bone. Eyewitness accounts described the roads of Russia littered so thoroughly with bodies that travelers could not pass without stepping over the dead. Then Batu turned west. In 1241, Mongol forces invaded Poland and Hungary simultaneously. The Polish army was destroyed at Legnica. The Hungarian army was annihilated at Mohyj. Mongol scouts reached the Adriatic Sea. Western Europe had nothing capable of stopping what was coming. And then they stopped. The great Khan Ögedei died in Mongolia in December 1241, and Batu turned his forces around to return for the succession. Europe was saved not by its knights, not by its castles, not by its prayers, but by the death of a man on the other side of the world. Batu founded the Golden Horde on the western steppe, a state that controlled Russia and extracted tribute from its princes for over 2 centuries. And through every campaign of his extraordinary career, Batu Khan was never defeated in open battle. Not once. His military record remains one of the most remarkable in Mongol history. Number 4. Hulagu Khan, founder of the Ilkhanate, reigned 1256 to 1265. In February of 1258, Hulagu Khan did something that changed the course of human history. He destroyed Baghdad. Baghdad, in 1258, was one of the greatest cities on earth. It was the capital of the Abbasid Caliphate and the intellectual heart of the Islamic world. The House of Wisdom, perhaps the greatest library and center of learning in the medieval world, stood there. Scientists, mathematicians, philosophers, and physicians had gathered there for generations, producing work that shaped human knowledge for centuries. Hulagu's forces killed between 200,000 and 1 million people in a single week. The Caliph himself was executed by being rolled in a carpet and trampled by horses, a Mongol method reserved for royalty to avoid spilling noble blood directly on the ground. The books of the House of Wisdom were thrown into the Tigris River. Eyewitnesses recorded that the river ran black with ink. The Islamic Golden Age ended that week. Hulagu then established the Ilkhanate across Persia and Iraq, one of the 4 great successor states of the Mongol Empire. His wife was a Christian. He maintained close alliances with the Crusader states. He was one of the most geopolitically complex figures the Mongol world produced. His advance was eventually halted at Ain Jalut in 1260, where the Mamluks defeated his forces in open battle. The Mongols had reached their western limit. Hulagu Khan ordered one of the most consequential acts of destruction in human history. The world that existed before, that February week in 1258, never fully returned. Number 3. Kublai Khan, 5th great Khan and founder of the Yuan dynasty, reigned 1260 to 1294. At his peak, Kublai Khan ruled more people than any individual who had ever lived. As the ruler of the Yuan dynasty in China and the nominal head of the entire Mongol world, Kublai governed approximately 100 million people. He completed the conquest of the Song dynasty in 1279, bringing all of China under Mongol control for the first time in history. He established his capital at Khanbalik, the city that would eventually become Beijing, and built one of the most magnificent imperial courts of the medieval world. His reign opened China to the world in ways that had never happened before. Marco Polo arrived at his court and spent 17 years there, later producing the account that gave European readers their first detailed picture of East Asian civilization. Merchants, diplomats, scholars, and travelers from across Eurasia moved freely through his empire during the period historians call the Pax Mongolica, the Mongol Peace, when the Silk Road was safer and more active than it had been for centuries. His failures were equally spectacular. His invasions of Japan in 1274 and 1281 both ended in catastrophe, with his fleets destroyed by typhoons the Japanese called kamikaze, meaning divine winds. His campaigns in Vietnam and Java also failed. In his later years, he became a shadow of the administrator he had once been. His beloved wife died. His chosen heir died before him. He grew obese, suffered from severe gout, and turned to food and alcohol for comfort. The man who had governed 100 million people ended his life in physical and emotional ruin. But at his peak, nobody in human history had ever ruled more of the world. That is a number that does not lie. Number 2. Ögedei Khan, second great Khan of the Mongol Empire, reigned 1229 to 1241. Without Ögedei Khan, the Mongol Empire might have died with Genghis. When Genghis died in 1227, the empire he had built was already beginning to crack along family lines. His sons were ambitious, rivalrous, and deeply suspicious of each other. It was Ögedei, chosen personally by Genghis as his successor, who held the entire structure together through force of personality and political skill. Under Ögedei, the conquests accelerated rather than slowed. The Jin dynasty of northern China, which Genghis had spent years fighting, was finally destroyed in 1234. Korea was subjugated. Persia was consolidated. And the western campaigns under Batu and the military genius Subutai swept through Russia, Poland, and Hungary, carrying the empire to its greatest territorial extent. Ögedei also built Karakorum, transforming the Mongol capital from a military camp into a genuine city, with palaces, temples, markets, and a population drawn from across the conquered world. He created a functioning imperial postal system across the entire empire that allowed information to travel thousands of miles in days. He was building a state, not just an army. His demons were real and ultimately fatal. Ögedei was an alcoholic of serious severity, and he knew it. His brother Chagatai appointed a personal guardian to limit his drinking. Ögedei simply bribed the guardian and continued as before. He drank himself to death at around 47 years old. His death, at the exact moment when Europe lay open and defenseless, is one of the most consequential accidents in medieval history. A sober Ögedei Khan might have permanently changed the map of the Western world. Number 1. Genghis Khan, first great Khan of the Mongol Empire, reigned 1206 to 1227. There is no other way to say this. Genghis Khan is the greatest conqueror in human history. But the achievement is not the part of his story that stays with you. It is where he started. His birth name was Temujin. He was born into a minor noble family on the Mongolian steppe sometime around 1162. When he was 9 years old, his father was poisoned by a rival clan, and his family was immediately abandoned by their followers. His mother raised her children alone on the steppe, with almost no resources, surviving on roots, berries, and small animals through winters that would kill an unprepared adult. As a young man, Temujin was captured by enemies and forced to wear a wooden kangwe around his neck, a heavy collar designed for prisoners and slaves. He escaped. His wife was kidnapped by a rival tribe shortly after their marriage. He spent years building alliances, fighting, losing, rebuilding, and fighting again from a position of almost nothing. By 1206, he had unified every tribe on the Mongolian steppe. No one had ever come close to achieving that before. He called the gathering the Kurultai, declared himself Genghis Khan, meaning universal ruler, and began what would become the greatest military campaign in human history. By the time of his death in 1227, Genghis Khan had conquered more territory than any individual before him. His empire stretched from the Pacific coast of China to the Caspian Sea. The campaigns he launched and the generals he trained would go on to extend it further still, until it covered nearly a quarter of all the land on Earth. But he was not only a conqueror. He built a legal code, the Yasa, that governed millions of people. He created the fastest long-distance communication system in the medieval world. He established religious freedom across his entire empire, protecting Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, and those of other faiths equally, at a time when the rest of the world was burning people alive over religious differences. He promoted people on merit rather than birthright, an idea that was genuinely radical in the 13th century. His methods were also brutal beyond modern comprehension. Cities that surrendered were often spared. Cities that resisted were frequently destroyed entirely. The populations of entire regions were massacred. Genetic research suggests that roughly 16 million people alive today are direct descendants of Genghis Khan, which tells you something about the scale at which he moved through the world. He died in 1227, under circumstances that remain uncertain. His burial site was hidden so completely that it has never been found. His own descendants carried out deliberate searches for it. Archaeologists have searched for centuries. It remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in history. A boy abandoned on the steppe, with nothing built the largest empire the world has ever seen. Nobody before him managed it. Nobody after him came close. That is what number one looks like. Now for the two special mentions. These figures were not Khans in the formal sense, but their stories are so inseparable from Mongol history that this list would be incomplete without them. Subutai, the greatest military general in Mongol history, and one of the greatest in all of human history. Subutai was not a Khan. He was a general, and he served Genghis Khan, Ögedei Khan, and Möngke Khan with a level of strategic brilliance that had no equal in his era. He planned and executed the conquest of Russia. He planned the simultaneous invasions of Poland and Hungary. He won over 65 major battles across his career and conquered more than 40 nations. He operated on a scale of strategic planning, coordinating forces across thousands of miles of terrain that would not be seen again in military history until the modern era. Every great Mongol campaign you have heard about in this video was planned, to a significant degree, by Subutai. Timur, known to the world as Tamerlane, lived 1336 to 1405. Timur was not a Genghisid. He could not claim direct descent from Genghis Khan, which meant under Mongol tradition he could never be a Khan. He called himself instead the Sword of Islam, and he married into the Genghisid line to claim legitimacy. What he built was staggering. From his base in Central Asia, he conquered Persia, Iraq, the Caucasus, northern India, and Anatolia. He defeated the Ottoman Sultan Bayezid I in battle and took him prisoner. He crushed Toqtamish and broke the Golden Horde permanently. He sacked Delhi and reportedly killed 100,000 prisoners in a single day before entering the city. He modeled himself explicitly on Genghis Khan. He built towers of skulls outside the cities he destroyed, a deliberate echo of Mongol terror tactics. He was responsible for the deaths of an estimated 17 million people, roughly 5% of the entire world population at the time. He died in 1405 on his way to invade China. He was 68 years old and had never stopped moving. He was not a Khan, but as close to Genghis Khan as anyone who came after him ever managed to get. The Mongol Empire lasted less than 2 centuries in its unified form, but in that time it reshaped Asia, devastated the Islamic world, threatened to overwhelm Europe, connected East and West through trade and communication, and produced a lineage of rulers whose influence echoed through history for centuries after the empire itself was gone. It began with one man on the steppe who had nothing, and it ended as the largest empire the world has ever known. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe and leave a comment telling us which Khan you think made the biggest impact on world history. Our next video looks at the most powerful clans in Chinese history, families who ruled, fought, and shaped a civilization that endured for thousands of years. We will see you there.